Hello and welcome to Angry Balloon. Today I have a very special guest, founder and Chief Technical Officer of FoxIO, John Althouse. Welcome, John. Glad that you are here. And before we jump into the state-of-the-art fingerprinting, I would like to ask you what path you actually took and how did you get into the cybersecurity?
So I suppose it all started, in high school. I was just always interested in computers and figuring out how they work and breaking things. And in high school, the computers were locked down and we just wanted to play video games. We were always, me and a group of my friends, we were always trying to figure out ways to hack into the high school computers so that we could play some games. And eventually we did. We figured out how to bypass all the security controls, crack the passwords, gained access to like everything. And we used that access to install Counter-Strike on the school servers so that we could just play Counter-Strike whenever we wanted. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that today, but back then it was a different world.
Was it 1.5 or 1.6?
It was 1.3, Counter-Strike 1.3 back then. Yeah.
I think that's a great motivation. Gaming is a great motivation. I think there is a lot of stigma, to be honest, in cybersecurity world for makers of the cheat software, right? Because they are thought of as something that is second class. And I absolutely do not believe it, because they have to bypass kernel level anti-cheats, and it is, I think, very hardcore reverse engineering role in today's landscape, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great entry way to get started into cybersecurity as a kid. You just have a goal that you want to do. You want to cheat in a game, I guess. But it teaches a lot of skill, and there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said for getting into PC games, especially when I started, because PC games generally didn't work out of the box. You always had to mess with some INI files or something just to get it to run properly, and that taught a lot about taught me everything I needed to know to get started in the world of computers professionally. Was just trying to get video games to work.
Have you ever cheated in the online?
No, I never felt the need to do that. I've always been, Counter-Strike was always my main online game that I would play, and I was always pretty decent at it. I wouldn't say it was great, decent.
That's a great excuse. And after the school, what path did you take to get into the cybersecurity? Because I assume it was much easier to do back then, when there were not 1 million different certificates or podcasts or schools about how to get into cybersecurity, right?
It actually took me almost 10 years, maybe 8 years to get into cybersecurity, something like that, out of high school. So out of high school, I didn't go to college. I'll say that because I couldn't find a college that would teach me the things that I wanted to learn about computers. Or if they had a computer, a cyber curriculum or anything like that, it was very the origins of computers and 9800 baud, and it was just very antiquated. So I just went into the industry, and I started off with a help desk job, a temp help desk job is where I started. And then that temp job led me to my first full-time job, which was working at a data center. And then from there, I got more into networking and became a network analyst. And then I was a network analyst and help desk for several years before I finally got my first job in cybersecurity at Symantec. So how I got that first cybersecurity job was just, I knew how I had the background of network administration and, how the internet backbone works because of my previous jobs and the data centers and all that sort of stuff. So I had pretty good background knowledge in how servers, computers, and networks work. And I had a friend who worked at Symantec, and they referred me, and I got the job, and that's how I got into cybersecurity. And I've been great ever since.
I have to say, a lot of people of our age got into the cybersecurity through help desk. If you go to Reddit and somebody is asking on some thread, hey, how do I get there? A lot of, let's say, old school guys, they are just telling, hey, start with the help desk, figure this out because you're going to solve problems. And that's what you will do for the rest of your career in one way or the other. So you got a job in Symantec as a network analyst, right? What does network analyst do? Is this
what
something?
Network?
Yes. Is this something there you just look at pickups every day?
So this is pre-Symantec. So as a network analyst, what I would do is fix networking problems. So this would be with like core routers on the internet, like logging into Junipers and figuring out what's wrong, answering like questions on, why is the latency slow here, figuring out what DDoS like was happening and how to mitigate the DDoS attack. Yeah, I'll say in one of my positions, I was actually responsible for protecting RIA, the Recording Industry Association of America, who at the time was suing everybody for downloading music. And so they're very unpopular. And this was around the time when like Anonymous started off of, Twitter and 4chan and all that sort of stuff. And so they decided that they were going to DDoS RIA and attack their office. And I was working, and it was my job to prevent this and keep their systems up and all that sort of stuff. That was fun. That was actually really interesting. I enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun because, they got their comms that they're talking through, and anyone can join them. So I was on there watching, like, hey, let's attack this IP. And I'm like, okay, let me fix that IP. So the early days Anonymous is, it's good fun.
That's an amazing example of, well, is it OSINT technically? I mean, you infiltrated animals to do your job, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure that's how, I'm not, there are companies where that is like their thing. That's what they do now, is they infiltrate, cybercrime organizations and then they sell that intel. So, yeah.
But you went on a very different path, right? Because
yeah, I didn't stay on. That was a lot of fun, but that was like a one-time thing. And then going to Symantec, I was at Symantec was a MSSP, managed security services provider. So they would call that MDR now. It's basically the same thing. And so we would just get security alerts all day long, and you would just look at security alerts and respond to them continuously for hundreds of companies or thousands of companies. And so I was at Symantec for about 2.5 years. So if you can imagine just getting like high security alerts and data like every minute of every day for 2.5 years, you learn a lot really fast. You get really good experience. And since then, when we were from Symantec, then I went at Salesforce, and I was at Salesforce for 10 years. So yeah, while we were at Salesforce, we would hire the best analysts would come from these managed security providers.
Because they have so much experience solving a lot of problems quickly, right? Because today it will be called something like alert fatigue, right? Here is 1 million cases for you to solve. Good luck.
Right, yeah. But in doing that, you become, it's not great. Like it was very exhausting, but you learn a lot really fast. And so someone who worked at a managed services provider or managed security provider, for 1 year had more experience than someone who worked in just one company's SOC for 4 years.
Those people have acquired a lot of experience. I mean, they grinded to get where they are, right?
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And in Salesforce, well, it's not exactly an MSSP, right?
Well, actually, so that was interesting. When I joined Salesforce, the security team was called the trust team back then, but there was 8 directors and no reports. I was report number 1. So I had 8 different bosses to tell me what to do at the very beginning, but it scaled up really quick. And we had a really great team over there. And Salesforce grew from when I joined Salesforce, it was a couple thousand employees, and then it grew to, I think when I left Salesforce, it was somewhere around like 60 or 80,000 employees. It was huge. And because the company was so large, we kind of became a managed security services provider for all of these different business units, just because there were so many different like organizations within the company. Yeah, it actually became quite a challenge, but it was a lot of fun.
So I think that's a story of a lot of Fortune 500, right? Because they are so big and they are so siloed. It's basically you have companies within the companies.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
There's this great meme about organizational structure of Google and Microsoft, right? And Microsoft is 3 units just pointing at each other with guns, right?
Yep.
And once you are just too big to fail, well, you have a lot of internal customers. So you were part of the MSSP where all of your customers are internal silos of Salesforce, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And I saw you LinkedIn and you had quite a few positions, right? Inside the Salesforce. Can you just quickly walk through some of the milestones or some of the most exciting parts?
Yeah. So I ended up becoming the director of threat detection at Salesforce. Probably the most fun I had was Salesforce had a adversarial red team at one point, and that's pretty rare today. So today, normally your red teams are more like purple teams. They work alongside you and whatnot. But they were adversarial. And what that did was it really helped push us to figure out how to catch them. Like we knew there was a threat actor in the environment. It was our red team, right? So we knew that they were there. We just had to find them. And having that constant back and forth was actually really valuable and pushed us to come up with new methods of detection that didn't exist at the time. So that's where like JA3 came from. JA3, the TLS client fingerprinting, was because they were doing at the time, their command and control channel was reverse SSH shells. And so we came up with a way to detect reverse SSH shells on the wire with Zeek. And then they were like, okay, well, we'll do reverse SSH over TLS. Like you can't detect that. And then that's when we came up with JA3 and we detected that. So it was just this back and forth leveling up, which was like really valuable.
Yeah, so for our listeners and viewers, JA3 and JA3S is proprietary or now open source fingerprinting method that it was created inside Salesforce by John Althouse, Jeff Atkinson, and Josh Atkins, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I actually quickly checked, and I think Josh Atkins now is in threat analysis group at Google, right? And Jeff Atkinson, I found a lot of information about him on the Salesforce things, but at least it appears to me that he doesn't have LinkedIn.
Yeah, he's a pretty private guy, but Jeff's a great person.
So, and JA3, like the name, it's like, my first question when I met you was, hey, does Salesforce hire security people only with initials JA, or was it just a coincidence?
It was totally a coincidence. We didn't even notice. It was one of my managers at the time was talking to us and like called me Jeff, no Josh, no John. There's too many JAs here. And I was like, that's what we're going to call it. So it's just a coincidence. It's kind of stuck.
So, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, I understand that you work at Salesforce. You have this adversarial red team that is just trying to do a lot of theoretical damage inside the Salesforce, right? So you and the team you're working with creates this new cool algorithm, or let's say method of fingerprinting, the TLS, it's client hello, right? And and then it's become something that is open source and widely used. Did you reach out to the manager or to the CISO or somebody, hey, we're going to create a new fingerprinting algorithm?
Oh, so we were looking at research that was done by Lee Brotherston, and he came up with a fingerprinting method, but his fingerprinting method didn't work for our logging platform. Like the fingerprints were just enormous and unwieldy, and it didn't work well for our analysis. So I was like, but this is what will catch them. So we need to work on this. We need to figure out how to get it into Zeek so that we can just deploy it everywhere easily. So Josh and I worked on the logic of it, and Jeff was our Zeek expert. Like Jeff could write the Zeek code, and so I wanted Jeff to work on this, and I wanted to work on this, and I knew how valuable it was. But management at the time was not excited about it. They were like, "We got other things to work on. This is like a pet project or something like that." And we just kind of pushed forward and did it anyways. And then when it was done, it was awesome. And then after that, I was like, wow, we should open source this. Like, this is super valuable. Like, other people in the industry are clearly working on sort of similar things. And I don't see any reason why people in the security industry should be building the same things in silos, because it just, it makes security slower, innovation slower. So yeah, I wanted to open source it, and management was also not happy about that. They were like, this is really good for us. We should just keep it close to the chest. If we let all of our adversaries know what our secret sauce is, they'll figure out ways around it. Yeah, kind of. But I think it would be really valuable. So we open sourced it. We pushed through and we open sourced it, and then it really caught on. And it ended up getting used by nearly everyone in the industry. Including, major Salesforce customers. And so it built a lot of trust for Salesforce as a brand. Anytime you would talk to people, they would say that Salesforce had one of the best cybersecurity teams, and they're at the top of the game, and that actually helped out with sales. So it made sales at least a lot easier. So it was actually a big deal, and everyone was really happy about it after that.
That's amazing. And I saw that you actually won a Shark of the Year award inside Salesforce. Was it for JA3 or something else?
Yeah. No, it was for JA3S, or JA3 and JA3S. It was so Salesforce at the time had this innovation awards, and they would kind of do this Shark Tank type thing, and so they would do one every year, and it was put on by the patent department. Basically, anytime you create something at Salesforce, you have to run it by the patent department so that they can find out if it's patentable, and then you get it entered into this Shark Tank thing. And so I presented it to the whole company, JA3S, and to the Shark Tank, and the executives running Shark Tank chose it as the best invention in the company for that year.
That's amazing. When you say Shark Tank, my first image that pops out in my head is the three sharks, CTO, CISO, CIO, and that are basically sitting in those chairs and going through all the applications and saying, I'm out. Well, I'm sorry to say, I'm out.
Yeah, it was pretty much that. Yeah, it was I think it was one of the CTOs and some people from marketing, who run marketing and run patents. So yeah, it was sort of like that. Yeah.
And after that, you and your colleagues went on and started working on something newer, right?
Yeah, a couple of years later, we started working on JARM. So this was for a hackathon type thing, where they were it was another contest in the company of who can build the best innovation in cybersecurity. So it was just for the cybersecurity department, which at that time had ballooned to be 2,000 people. It was huge. Back from my original, 8 plus me. So me and my team, the threat detection team, it was Andrew, RJ, Mike, and myself, along with Caleb Yu. We worked on this idea that I had that, what if we send a whole bunch of unique TLS client hellos and then fingerprint the responses and then aggregate those responses? Could we then fingerprint like what the server was? And the answer was yes. And so we presented that for this hackathon, and of course we won that contest. Hands down, it was pretty good. But it wasn't quite done yet, and I wanted to finish it and release it just like JA3S. Management at the time did not want us working on that. They were like, no, we got other things to work on. It's a cool idea, but let's do other things. So we did it anyway, and then released it and open sourced that, and then that got put into everything just like JA3 did. So then management was like, oh, that was pretty good.
So
the way it goes.
What I'm hearing is in Salesforce, in this amazing cybersecurity department with over 2,000 people, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
But yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So long as it works out, I suppose. And maybe I got lucky because my projects always ended up working out.
That's so interesting, because I understand maybe the skepticism of open sourcing JA3 at the beginning, right? But then you use it, you channel it, you use it. Everybody was using it at the time, right? And then almost the same idea, but better, is getting pitched, and you're saying, oh, you know what? I'm still skeptical. I don't think we should do that.
Well, different management, yeah. Our as with any company, like our top level management was constantly changing. So someone new comes in and they want to like assert their authority, or I don't know.
During those, I think 9 years, right, or almost 10 years at Salesforce, how many managers have you had in total?
Probably 8.
So it's one per
8
year,
managers.
Right? One per year.
Yeah, basically, yeah, new one almost every year. Yeah, which is pretty standard for these
big
types of companies, for these big tech companies. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with average tenure of 1 year, you basically just hop every year and you double your salary in 5 years, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, and after creating JA3S and JARM, was there something also very exciting that we didn't mention during your Salesforce time?
So another one was Hash, HASSH. So that actually came from Ben Reardon, and Ben Reardon also on the threat detection team. And I think he works at Corelight now. Or if not, he did. But yeah, Ben's really super smart guy. And he was just thinking about JA3 and how it worked. And he was also looking at SSH packets. And he was like, wait a second, we could do the same thing for SSH because they have similar sort of headers that are in the clear at the beginning of an SSH connection. And so, yeah, with that, we were able to fingerprint SSH clients and servers. So to be able to be like, if they say they're open SSH version, whatever, is it actually that, or is it something more nefarious? Works perfectly. Still works today.
What led you to ending your relationship with Salesforce and moving on?
I mean, like with anything, it was time. It was time. I had other things that I wanted to work on, and the organization was huge. It wasn't like the small team that we started with, and the projects were starting to take longer and longer. But these are just like, it's not a Salesforce problem specific. These are just any super large organization trying to figure out that grows really fast and trying to figure out what to do from there. So it was just time.
And after that, you moved on to a different company, right? Can you tell us just a little bit before we jump into your exciting new venture?
Yes. So yeah, I worked at Robinhood for a year, and then I worked at Appian for a year. Appian was great, but I just wanted to keep working on cool projects, and so that's what kind of led me to start FoxIO.
And right now you're doing something at least as exciting as the things that you did at Salesforce, but I believe much more exciting. If you can just plug in and describe what is that the FoxIO is doing right now?
Yeah. So the main thing that FoxIO has right now is JA4 Plus. So JA4 Plus is the evolution of JA3, where it expands upon it in many different ways, and it is network fingerprinting for a bunch of different protocols now. So it's no longer just like TLS; it's now everything. And we're working on expanding that fingerprinting constantly. We're constantly working on new things, and we're trying to solve, I suppose, essentially the mission of FoxIO is to solve the internet, to solve like the internet's biggest problems and challenges, in the most like simple and elegant way that we can. So these are the things we're working on, and supporting it full time. So unlike JA3 and JARM, which were open source and they were pet projects, they didn't get the attention that they deserved. Like I think the JA3 repo had something like 60 issues in the GitHub repo that like nobody looked at, and like 10 pull requests. These open source side projects tend to die off, and I didn't want that to happen. And so the only way to prevent that from happening is if it's your full-time job. So that's what we're doing here.
So going back to JA3 quickly, I would like to ask you, I know that there is a patent for hash, HASSH, right? Are there patents for JA3 and JARM?
Yeah, there's a patent for both JA3 and JARM, yes. Because like anything that you wanted to open source at Salesforce, it had to go through the patent office. So like if we wanted to put it on GitHub, there was no choice. We had to go through that. So they patented it, and then we open sourced it, and we open sourced the BSD3 clause, which sort of makes the patent mute. It's effectively open sourcing the patent.
For listeners and viewers, there is JA4 and there is JA4 Plus. And JA4 is also open source.
Yep, just like JA3, open source, a BSD3 clause.
So anybody can use it, and a lot of companies do. I have read that you can use JA4 fingerprints in Cloudflare, AWS, and a bunch of other companies.
Yep, VirusTotal, yeah, Google stuff, yep.
And I think one of the interesting early adopters that I found, I think, is F5, because they also support JA4 Plus, right, in their rules.
Yep. Yeah. So, and that's a great spot for them too, because the F5 big IP is where all, like, if you want to fingerprint all the traffic coming into your application, the load balancer is the place to do it. Either the load balancer or WAF. Yeah, that's where you want to have a JA4 Plus fingerprints if you want to fingerprint the incoming traffic and filter out all the bots and bad stuff.
Yeah. So for the listeners and viewers, JA4 is client hello fingerprint as well, and JA4 Plus is a suite of different fingerprints. You have JA4 S, which is for server, right? Like the same thing as JA3S, right? You fingerprint server instead of the client. You have JA4 Plus for SSH. You have one for TCP, and well, a bunch of other.
Right. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them, and we're working on more. So yeah, I would say if anyone wants to find out more about it, I would say just Google JA4, and it's the first link. First link is probably our GitHub, and all the details are there.
Until some startup will do the SERP hijack and will create 1 million AI generated articles about JA4 and JA4 Plus.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Google can filter those, but we'll see.
Yes. Maybe before going deeper into JA4, I was wondering, do you think that it was a mistake for people to call them fingerprints? And I'm not talking about JA4 or JA3, I'm also talking about P0F, which is very, very early attempt at fingerprinting operational systems using TCP traffic, for example.
So you're saying like should it have been called something else, not fingerprints?
Well, with fingerprint, I have a feeling, and I think a lot of people do, that it is something that can be used for attribution. And if you look at the fingerprint, you can have indication of something, of the specific browser, if you're talking about JA3 or JA4, or specific network stack, if you're talking about J4T or other TCP fingerprints, right? But it is what it is. It is an indication. It is not concrete proof, because there is a misconception in science world that fingerprints are unique, which is case in, but it's not concrete, right? You can definitely have fingerprints belonging to different people, right? And it is the same thing with networking.
Yeah. It's these are observables that should be used in combination with other observables in order to build out, a good indicator of what's going on. And that's kind of why we built so many fingerprints with JA4 Plus, is because any one fingerprint does not necessarily mean that this traffic is, malware or something like that. But the combinations of the fingerprints altogether can increase that likelihood by a huge amount. And so I don't know what else to call it other than fingerprint, though.
I like observable, to be honest, because it is what it is. You just observe some pattern, some unique characteristics, and based on this you can decide something or just have an indication, right? Because I don't want to call them indicators, because, well, it would not. Yeah, because it would be wrong to do that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what they are. They're observables. Yeah. And sometimes they're silver bullets, and when they're silver bullets, they're great. But a lot of times they are additional information that can lead you to finding whatever it is that you're looking for.
Okay, and speaking of JA4 fingerprints or fingerprints in general, when you talk to people, do you feel there is just some silo of people who are very deep into network security and understand what you're talking about, versus a huge chunk of people who do everything else but not fingerprinting?
What do you mean?
Well, you have a huge network of people who follow you, who you discuss traffic fingerprints, and I was wondering if you see that the industry is changing and is more accepting, hey, we need this, we need to do decisions or have some indications based on what you're doing, or do you feel everybody is just trying to buy the next phishing exercise and be done with cybersecurity?
Yeah, so we're definitely helping to change the mindset, the usual mindset of, there's no point in looking at the network traffic because it's all encrypted, all you need are flow logs and that's it, that type of stuff. And we're certainly changing that. When I give my network fingerprinting presentations at security conferences, I start off with in this talk over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to show you how to detect and prevent, all these malwares, session hijacking, stolen API secrets, zero-day edge device compromise, basically solving the internet in this one presentation. And it sounds impossible, but then when I go through it and I explain how, different packets will tell you different things and how you can put those fingerprints together and then you can filter it out and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the presentation, you're like, oh man, all that is possible. And then people are like, yeah, we need more network visibility. And so, yeah, they're coming around. Now, of the network that I have, people I talk to, there's a lot of people who are way smarter than me, and I love talking with them, being friends with them. That's great. So I don't know what to say.
Well, do they love
Yeah. Yeah, because it makes their job easier. It makes my job easier. One of the best things about JA4 is that it's human readable. So when someone sends me a fingerprint, they're like, "Hey, what's this?" I don't have to like look it up or ask them to give me the PCAP. I can just glance at it and be like, "Oh, I know what that is." And that's the biggest advantage over like JA3, which was just an MD5 hash. Yeah, JA4 is human readable. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, what I like about J4T personally and TCP fingerprints in general is that you can immediately say, hey, are you connecting through the VPN? Yeah, how do you know? Well, because MSS is just different. So you know exactly, okay, you are not on the default network stack, so you're either connecting through cellular or VPN. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, exactly. With these fingerprints, you can be like, oh, this person is connecting from a Mac and they're on a VPN, or they're going through Apple's
private
proxy.
relay.
Yeah, that private relay thing. Yeah, exactly. And you can just glance at it and you can tell exactly what they're doing and where they're coming from. And this is all before encryption even happens. It's great.
Is there some specific use case that gets you very, very excited? Say Cobalt Strike.
I've spent like finding Cobalt Strike is pretty just easy. And I actually, when I was working on JA4X, which is the X509 certificate fingerprinting, I was specifically trying to not find Cobalt Strike because I was tired of like having Cobalt Strike in my blogs on like, here's how you find more Cobalt Strike. I was looking for Sliver, and then I was doing my analysis. I was like, oh, what's this? And I click on it, and it was just a total list of Cobalt Strike C2 servers, which were all, I think it was the Cobalt Strike Cat variant. It was like some Chinese variant of Cobalt Strike, but they all had a very specific fingerprint. And so it's like, oh, here's the whole list. That's easy. It's like the shortest hunt ever. I wasn't even looking for it. But yeah, Cobalt Strike's fun, I suppose. But otherwise, it's really just, when people come to me and they're like, here's the problem we have, here's what we need to figure out how to detect to stop this specific threat from happening to us. I always get excited about those. It's a new challenge. And I always believe that there's a way to detect everything. It's just a matter of spending the time to figure it.
Okay. And maybe do you have any sneak peek or preview of some fingerprinting algorithm or method that is upcoming in the JA4 Plus suite?
A couple things we're working on. One of them is an update to JARM. So that'll be like JA4 server scan. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, but we're figuring that out because JARM doesn't work anymore. And it needs to be updated, and like the whole concept just needs to be completely reworked so that it's just more effective and works with like, the future of the internet, which is all HTTP 3 and quick and whatnot. So we're working on that. Also working on HTTP server response of fingerprinting. So this is like active HTTP server scanning. So that would kind of be like JARM, but for, HTTP websites. Like what website is this? Some sort of standard fingerprint there, I think, would just really help with the internet scanners like Census, DriftNet. But what else are we working on? I'm taking a look at email fingerprinting, like fingerprinting based on email headers. There's some interesting things there, which could potentially help find like spam more easily. But that's like very early on. I'm just, I got like 10,000 email headers with some of them spam, some of them legit, and I'm trying to figure out like what the difference is between them and if there's some good fingerprinting markers in. So these are the things we're working on, and if anyone else has any other thoughts or suggestions on what we should work on, feel free to send them my way.
Great. Now moving on from JA4 and JA4 Plus suite, all right, you are founder of the FoxIO, right? It is your company and you have a partner, right?
Yeah, exactly. Josh Alexander is a business partner,
which is incidentally also is J.
Yeah. So Josh jokes that his name was Tem, but he had to change it legally in order for us to go into business.
And then in 10 years, you're going back to Salesforce, and all those 2,000 people working in cybersecurity at Salesforce will have to change their names.
Yes.
So their
Yeah,
initials are also J.
Yes, these are new requirements.
Maybe you can give one advice to cybersecurity experts that are thinking about starting their own company.
It's hard. It's super hard. Yeah, it requires, I don't know. That's because everyone is different and they're able to go about it in different ways. I'll just say probably the biggest thing that I've learned and continue learning is and this was advice that was given to me from Andrew Morris, the founder of Grey Noise. Give the people what they want. Don't build something that you know that would solve a problem, but people aren't asking for it, because they'll be like, oh, cool, that actually does solve that problem. But that's not what I'm worried about, right? So don't do that, because I've done that. And people are like, this is awesome, but it doesn't turn into sales. You can't make a living that way. But people keep asking for, like, JA4 Plus, they keep asking for more fingerprints, they keep asking for a fingerprint database and for, fingerprint lists, curated lists of, like, what should I be worried about? And so that's what we're doing. And that's where we're finding, the most, enthusiasm, I suppose. So based on that, I would say my advice is to give the people what they want, like listen to what they're asking for and then build that.
I will add to this is build a network, and preferably build a network of early adopters.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, definitely. Like, I always say it's not what you know, it's who you know that matters most. And so knowing a lot of people is very huge in this industry, just in general, not even for like starting a company, but just in general, having a good network of good people is super important. Best advice I could give is just, go out to conferences and meet people, get to know people. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, just second to last question, and maybe something much lighter than the things that we spoke about. If you have a piece of entertainment like book, movie, a TV show that you think perfectly captures the essence of cybersecurity, what is this piece?
I mean, it's gotta be, I don't know. I would go with the movie Hackers from the 90s. Yeah, because it's just, it's still the best hacker movie, because it's all just sort of memes and silly, and that's kind of like how that's kind of just how we all are, and how we kind of treat it. It's a bit of a joke, and it's just fun, and like going back to that example where I was like protecting Ria from a DDoS attack from Anonymous. It's just fun, and I was kind of like rooting for him too at the same time. I was like, try a little harder, guys. Like, challenge me a bit. Yeah, it's just fun.
Imagine writing in the IRC chat or whatever it was, you can do better than that.
You guys can do better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Hackers is a cult movie at this point, and it is a joke about the joke. It's the thing on itself, right? You go to the Twitter and everybody is excited about movie Hackers, despite it being not really accurate.
No, but if it were perfectly accurate, it would be really boring to watch. So it was the perfect amount of like movie, what do they call it? I don't remember what the term is, but adapted for film, so that is fun to watch. And that was back in the days of it was before of like Backorifice and Sub7, and so a lot of the hacking tools back then were like that. They were very silly. Sub7 was my favorite, because you could make someone's screen go black, and then you could just type a green text to them so it looked like the Matrix. It's just silly hacking tools. Stuff like that doesn't exist anymore. Now it's all just gathering information.
I totally agree. I think at that period of time, hackers, it's misfits. You can just do something for fun or because it is cool. And right now you have just all those organized crime units, basically trying to figure out how to ransomware next hospital, which is...
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's terrible, it's sad, and it's crossing the line compared to the movie where there's this one person just screaming, hack the planet, right? It's different. It's very
innocent and fun. Yeah.
Yes.
And that was what it was like back in the in very early 2000s. It was there's not a lot of hacking for profit. It was all just fun. Like, Kevin Mitnick was just hacking for the challenge of it.
Yes. Or ejecting the CD-ROM, right? When you had the tray. Remember the program cup holder? And it just ejects the thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man.
So moving to, I think, my last question. What is the one question that you have never been asked in an interview, but wish someone would ask you?
I have no idea. I don't know. That's a tough question. I'd have to think about that beforehand. I don't know.
It's fine. We can do a follow-up.
Yeah. But I'm open to answering any questions. I just don't know.
It is fine. So if you're interested in the next generation of network fingerprinting, you can go to foxio.io or reach out to John on LinkedIn, on GitHub, whatever is it you're comfortable with. And that's pretty much it. And on that note, it is time to sign off. Thank you for being part of Angry Blue. Thank you, John, for coming. And see you next
Thanks
time.
for having me. All right. See you.